When we think of perfection, our minds may conjure images of fields of flowers, perfectly sunny days, and exceptional craftsmanship. However, in the case of the lady in red, she was perfect in death. In Holmes County, Mississippi, there lies the small town of Cruger. This sleepy hollow had a population of less than 300 people as of 2020. But on a hot day in 1969, the residents were shocked by a mind boggling mystery. A family decided to install a septic tank for their home. Unfortunately, a worker hit a hard object with his backhoe as several men stood around. Having only been buried about 4 feet below the surface, the workers didn't think much of the incident until they took a better look. Just below the upturned dirt, they found a remarkable coffin with a glass window showing a female body preserved in alcohol. This method of burial and preservation was common before the Civil War and was used mainly by families of the upper crust of society. As word of the mysterious lady in red spread throughout the county, people began to rush to the scene to see the coffin for themselves. Then, as phones rang and tongues wagged, newspapers began to pick up the story, making a local event a global mystery. Oddly enough, no pictures were taken of the body or the coffin. Since the backhoe broke the protective glass, most of the preservatives leaked from the coffin, showing the deceased body. It is important to note that no DNA was gathered because the science of sample collection needed to be advanced in 1969. Quote, the method of preservation used for the Lady in Red was common prior to the Civil War, when custom made caskets shaped to the body were ordered as one would order a dress. The glass that sealed the coffin was placed over the body, and the alcohol was poured inside until it was level full, then sealed with a cast iron tip. End quote. The Clarion Ledger. Inside the body shaped coffin lay a perfectly preserved young woman with long dark hair and youthful skin, dressed in a red velvet dress with a lace collar and wearing white gloves, silk stockings, and square toed leather boots. Her hands had been carefully placed on her chest, with her fingers covering her heart. Some in attendance said that the lady was so perfectly preserved that she appeared to be sleeping, resembling a princess from a long ago tale, almost doll like. Her clothing seemed to coincide with the timing of the coffin, making many believe she died before the Civil War. The town hoped to find a permanent place of rest, and the coffin was resealed and taken to Lexington, Mississippi, where she was buried in the Odd Fellows Cemetery. And while no one knows the true identity of the beautiful woman in red, she has become popular as a tourist attraction for people visiting the area. Her story has intrigued many, making her famous in death. There are a few theories about what caused the woman's death and why she was buried in a shallow grave by the river. There are a few stories from individuals claiming to know the story of the lady in red. People claim the Egypt Plantation was a stop for riverboats coming up the Yazoo River to Greenwood. Locals believe the lady in red could have been a passenger on a paddle wheel riverboat when she died. However, this theory can easily be debunked to the custom build of the coffin. It would have been crafted in advance of her death. Perhaps this means she suffered from an illness and the family prepared well for her passing. Meanwhile, some residents in Tachula spoke of how they were told the young woman was quickly buried when she developed a fever of some unknown origin, likely yellow fever. Because of the fear of contagion, she was unloaded at the first river port available. There are two versions of this story. One is she died on the boat, and the other is that the body and the casket were being transported somewhere. However, as mentioned before, her coffin was made to fit her body perfectly and was pre-made. It is doubtful that she carried the casket and the preserving alcohol with her on a trip to visit family or friends. Lastly, another local account speaks of how there was a flood of high water the year she died around 1900. and no place to bury her was dry at that time. So they put her in a boat and they went out to find a spot of dry land. The location in Egypt was 7 miles down from where she lived. They would have drifted that way in a boat. The story goes that they found a dry spot and buried her there on a beautiful riverbank overlooking the sparkling water. It is vital to note that two major Mississippi floods occurred in 1891 and 1913. Significant flooding in the spring of 1891 on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers started on March 16th. The flooding was catastrophic, causing losses to most planted crops in the region and disrupting freight and passenger rail services on the river's west bank for several months. The Great Flood of 1913 occurred between March 23rd and 26th, after major rivers in central and eastern United States flooded from runoff and several days of heavy rain. Secondary to the flood were diphtheria and typhus outbreaks in several flooded areas. The Great Flood changed how natural disaster help is provided to aid those who are affected, and evidence of the flood can still be seen today. And since it is speculated that the lady in red died of an illness, it seems very common that maybe she did, in fact, die from one of the diseases caused by the floods. Even though stories of the Sleeping Beauty spread throughout the nation, no one came forward to share the identity of the Lady in Red. And even though it is believed that she had been dead for roughly 75 years when she was discovered, her family would have kept some records to share with friends and family. To this day, she lies beneath the shade of a tree where hundreds of people each year come to pay their respects. No one wants to be forgotten, but the famous lady that lives at the Oddfellow Cemetery has captured the hearts of a town. Perhaps in death, she is remembered better than she was in life. But one thing is beautifully obvious: the lady in red will never be forgotten.